For your patience, we have our speakers online right now as we speak, and we're thrilled to be able to hear from them. My name is Caroline Player, and on behalf of the Georgia Tech Alumni Association, I welcome you all. We're in for a treat of a conversation as Laura Hodgson, serial entrepreneur, Tech alumna, guides us through discussions on growing fearlessly in entrepreneurship. A little bit about Laura, and she is going to tell you about our speakers. Laura is president and CEO of Now Account. She has launched product and service businesses, raised capital, and served in executive management roles with Nourish, Dewberry Capital, Dunk, and Excel. Laura has extensive experience in brand development, corporate strategy, business development, marketing, and operations, and she has worked with companies such as Nike, Coke, the Home Depot, Heads, and others. Laura received an MBA from Harvard Business School and a bachelor's in aerospace engineering with highest honors from Georgia Tech, where she was a scholarship member of the varsity track team, was named to as one of the top 20 students in the U.S. by USA Today, and was selected to study in Japan with U.S. Department of Defense. Laura also served as ambassador to Lebanon during the 1996 Olympic Games. Laura is a adjunct instructor in graduate classes in finance at Georgia Tech's Scheller College of Business and serves as a founding board member of Atlanta Heights Charter School. She has served on the boards of Flag Bank, Society of International Business Fellows, Central Atlanta Progress, and Georgia Tech's Alexander Thought Fund. We are also thrilled to have her on the board of trustees at the Georgia Tech Alumni Association. So without further delay, let me turn this program over to you, Laura.
Great, Caroline. And let me know when you have the slides up, since we're going to do the little Vanna White thing here.
Okay.
Add that to your resume. That's right. For those of you that have joined us before, you kind of know a little bit of the program. For those of you that haven't, I'll just tell you a little bit about what we do here. We had a year ago doing these webinars, Conversations with Entrepreneurs, and the 4 or 5 sessions were really just me talking. It was kind of a conversation with myself. Turned out I have a lot of opinions, but a lot of topics, which you may or may not care about. But we started about 5 months ago instead bringing in other entrepreneurs from the community just to talk about their experiences. So if you missed the last couple, you can find them on the Georgia Tech Alumni YouTube. We did one a couple months ago with Mark Huddle, who has a great styles business, was a member of the 1990 national champion football team. Last month we had Patrick Whaley, who is the founder of Titan, and many of you know has been on Shark Tank and other high-profile occasions. So today we have 2 amazing guests, and we've got with us Greg Foster and Sherry Ferrugia, and read you a bio, which you can go to LinkedIn and find. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I know both of them, and then I'll let them tell a little bit about their path, because I've got some topics that we're going to talk about today, including leadership, focus, how we sort of found our path, entrepreneurship in general, and then some of the really cool things that are going on at Tech. But I'll start with Greg. So Greg Foster and I met at Tech. Greg got his bachelor's in mechanical engineering in '95, and we met as students at Tech. We found ourselves in many of the same organizations, and a lot of different things. But even beyond Tech, both went to Harvard Business School. Both started in consulting before Harvard Business School. I was at Anderson. He was at Deloitte. And then after Harvard Business School, both ended up at IXL. It's sort of a follow the leader thing going on here. And then Greg went on, that was where our paths diverged, and we both went off and started a whole series of different businesses that we've started, been a part of growing, sold, et cetera. And so I'll have Greg tell you a little bit more about some of his paths and decisions. Sherry and I met years ago. Sherry is actually the director of health partnerships at Georgia Tech right now. And many of you have heard about the exciting new partnership with Children's Healthcare, which Sherry also runs. But Sherry and I met several years ago as well. I was running Dunk, and Sherry had a business in the event planning space. It was a complete diversion from her career in healthcare technology. But we happened to meet and have been friends since then. She's gone on to start businesses
Up right now. Sorry about that. I put myself on mute. Yes, we're loading right this second. You're almost done. There we go.
No, I see him. Okay, so can you get to the fourth slide?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's someone moved for me before. That's cool. So I thought I would start with Greg, and I put this slide together just because it represents some of the many things that he's done throughout his career. But maybe you can just kind of tell us what took you through this path, because one of the things that is very common amongst both of you and me that makes me feel better is you've both done so many different things opposed to like one industry, one focus. So what led you from tech to consulting, ultimately to technology, and you've been in a number of different technology businesses?
Well, first of all, and it's a pleasure, thank you for me to come and talk.
It's so far, but you want to take that later.
We got a lot of time left. So when I sort of followed the typical analyst in a consulting job, and then I going into Harvard Business School, decided I wanted to go work for a big strategy firm, had an offer from McKinsey. We talked, and you got to, talk to this Bill Nussey guy. Now, I'd been put up at the Four Seasons for the McKinsey job, and it paid a lot of money. It was a wonderful weekend, right? And I came down to visit Bill when he was CEO or president at that time by himself. He put me up at the Holiday Inn on Howell Mill, which I think it got condemned and it's gone now. He basically said, I'll pay you half the salary, but you'll have twice the fun. You'll grow in your career. And so somehow I took that bait.
You missed that finance class at Harvard.
The divide by two part was, and the Holiday, not quite the Four Seasons.
Not quite the Four Seasons.
In any case, had a fantastic role there, ran corporate development for a while. Before that, ran an office in Madrid for about a year. Lived in Europe. That was a lot of fun. Then what's an insanity doing? He called off to be CEO of Silverpop, which is a marketing automation firm that just sold to IBM about a year ago.
So he'd divide your salary in half again.
So he's like, we don't have anybody to run revenue, and I'm like, I've never done that. He's like, that's never stopped you. Okay, we'll do it again. So I was at Silverpop for a couple of years, then decided, to start something. So I started an e-commerce business that Turner invested in called Indirect.
I couldn't that logo. I was trying to find that for the slide.
There's a font. We that company, and I became the head of corporate development at Turner. And that was a great 3.5 or so years, doing our M&A for CNN and all the TS brands and that sort of thing. Left to go be a partner at Nelosa here in town, did that for a couple of years. Enjoyed it, but really wanted to have a number on my back, be on the field again. Use sports analogies, I know those are very near to your heart. And then started Bright Whistle. Healthcare tech's huge, obviously. We wanted to build the first marketing automation platform that's securely, housed PHI in a HIPAA-compliant manner. Make it so that CMOs and hospitals and the provider mainly, but payers as well, use that to attract and acquire the right types of patients that provide for higher net contribution margin type features. So we contributed to the costs, basically, of our healthcare.
There you go.
But we
kind of goes with your pattern. Cut your salary in half, add the cost.
It's a great way to run a business. But so we sold that company in February to a Birmingham-based company called Influence Health. And my partner and I, great close friends, he's now in New York with his wife, is at Parsons, and I'm still down here. So I'm doing a bunch of M&A projects and that sort of thing.
So he's looking to pay you half of what you've made before.
Sure, I'm in.
You're good.
And I'm some investments and doing things like that. So I'm really still in the community and trying to remain.
I think it's amazing because a lot of times you come out of tech with a degree in mechanical engineering like you did, or aerospace like I did, and you think there's this finite set of places you're supposed to go. And to realize that you can really find a very interesting path through opportunities, through meeting the right people, et cetera, I think sets a great stage. So, Sherry, I've also got some great, if you get the next slide, of people always say you've got to find the one thing you love and that's all you do. And many of us watch people go through their careers and they're pretty linear, right? I mean, they go up, they get promoted, et cetera. But much like Greg, you've had a winding path. So, you started in healthcare technology, you sold a business, you went out of healthcare technology, you're back then. How did you think about those?
Well, healthcare was definitely always my love, without doubt. And I've been here since I was 12 years old. I mean, I literally started working in a hospital when I was 12 in pharmacy. I loved pharmacy, and it drove me to the technology side. And after we sold the company to McKesson, I stayed on at McKesson. I ran their alternate care division, much like you, Greg, flying around the corporate jet, huge budget, training. I mean, we were making money, and we were signing large customers, large partnerships, and I was wooed away to start another company. I guess maybe one of the first 10 employees for the next company, CareCentric Solutions, and worked with them. We went through Series B, merged the company at Series D, and during the time where there was a lot of turmoil in health, quite frankly, I was burned out. I did, it was the only thing I knew. I'd never done anything else. And I started doing a little bit of consulting still in healthcare and happened to meet the person who became my second partner, Christina Felton. And I said, what if we dabbled in health, but we did other things? I was telling Laura earlier that I got to the point where I felt like I was networking with myself. I knew everyone. I'm too comfortable is really what it came down to. I started to feel like I was doing the same thing every day, and it was not exciting any longer. So I met Laura, we had Resonate, and part of that was really looking at how we could best use marketing and brand dollars within a company. And what we saw at the time was that there were a tremendous amount of dollars for whether you would call it a conference or an event or branding, but there wasn't much branding going on. And it really was a party. It was just a party. And it really came back to, well, nothing's wrong with just having a party, but, if you're trying to accomplish something from a branding perspective, you might want to think about it a little bit. So what we did was we really took our expertise that we had used in healthcare to grow companies and move that into other verticals to see if it would work. And it did work. And we had a lot of fun. And it was a great experience. Again, in the background, I continued to do health, and I never got away from it. It was something that continued to be a draw for me. And a lot of you may know Stephen Fleming, who was at Joint for many years and invested in my second company. And he had always said, if we have an opportunity to work together again, I'd really like that. Stephen Fleming ended up at Georgia Tech. Steve Russell ended up at Georgia Tech. Mark Bronstein ended up at Georgia Tech. So all my peeps ended up at Georgia Tech. And so when the opportunity presented itself to Georgia Tech, I jumped at the opportunity. I was told by many people, including some of the folks who Laura and I are very good friends with, that you're not going to be happy there. It's not fast enough for you. You are going to be bored out of your mind. And let me tell you, it's that long. It is, every day is a learning experience. I always say that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I'm never the smartest person in the room at Georgia Tech. It is absolutely a wonderful experience. And during that time, Laura, I was to run health partnerships at Georgia Tech, particularly in the health IT space, which is my background. And during that time, Healthcare Atlanta invested in a research portfolio at Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech matched that, and it was a $20 million research portfolio, and I had to run that partnership. We have working wonderful things, and it really
all in the pediatrics.
All in the pediatric space, and all in things that wouldn't be fun otherwise.
Right.
It is, so to see the impact that we're having on the lives of children, not just in the city, not state, but in the region and in our country, and globally is it's really a dream come true.
Caroline, if you can go to the next slide. One of the things that, as I was looking at everybody's backgrounds, this is something I've always struggled with in my career, is you always have these well-meaning advisors that come up to you and say, you've got to focus. I mean, you know, if you look at my background, it's like yours. It has meandered through different industries, different roles, different jobs. And, you know, I think I've finally got to the point in my career where I turned around and said, you know what, that's wrong. But some people, that's right. I mean, for some people, focus is the way to go. But for me, I've experiences I had in one industry or one scene. When I bring it somewhere else, it allows me to look at the problem from a different perspective, that's actual value I bring. And, you know, you mentioned that when you stepped out of healthcare IT, not only do you meet people you never would have met that have now become really valuable in your career, but it allows you to take that expertise that you only applied in healthcare and apply it in different verticals. And you know, same thing, Greg, you've been in entertainment, you've been in retail, you've been in IT, healthcare. You know, what do you say to people, because my kids, there's a lot of people at Georgia Tech and Harvard that are good at a lot of things. And so they're, well, what should I focus on? I'm good at a lot of things. You know, is the answer always to focus, or how would you respond?
I think that, I guess the way I think about it is you tend to only in retrospect be able to, you know,
make sense out of your
decision. Right. Things together correctly. I think as an entrepreneur have to have comfort with ambiguity, you know, circuitous routes. I tend to think of my career as sort of the umbrella is business building. You know, not entrepreneurship per se, but business building, not build businesses that have sort of verbs and nouns is the way I put it to people. So the nouns are entertainment, healthcare, the vertical perhaps. And verbs tend to be, at least for me, marketing, technology, marketing automation, things of that nature. So they're in media, I would say. Media as an application, not per se as a vertical. So from the verb business building, that's what I manage. Yeah, because you can cross-link those things, and that's when Chad and I built Brightwhistle, you know nothing about healthcare. I went to the doctor. That was the extent of my knowledge of healthcare, and I knew it was screwed up. So, you know, for us, we were the least experienced, and yet probably the most equipped, because we didn't have any of the baggage that a lot of people have oftentimes in a vertical that they don't.
Always
so
yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
You build a HIPAA database in the cloud on Amazon. You don't pay for it, but you can't. We were able to patent that. So I think that for me, and when I talk to younger entrepreneurs, I don't tell them, hey, you've got to have that. What I do tell them is you should be able to look in retrospect and see those places, because that helps you define the next decision. Whether starting a new business or going into a bigger business or going into academia or whatever. You know, that's
true, because so many people that you meet say, well, I've always done accounting and healthcare. That's what I have to do. And I'm like, really? Do you have to? You know, you've done accounting, but to your point, you could apply that verb or that noun to an industry. So the opportunities are broader than you think. Did they ever tell you to focus?
I tell myself that every day.
My wife.
I tell my children that. I tell my husband that. There's a joke.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Well, every single person I've ever been connected with, that I've had a partnership with, whether it's in my personal life or whether it's in business life, are AD. They're just attracted to me. So, I use the word focus many, many times a day.
I think entrepreneurship is unmedicated ADD. In fact, we're medicating so many kids we may be killing entrepreneurship in our country.
Very well, maybe. Interesting that you describe the way that you do, Greg. And what I would say is that, but for me, it was about I always want to start something. You know, it was always about what can I start. I want to, whether it was launching a new vertical within an existing product line, whether it was trying something new, using the existing knowledge that I had. but it was about starting something and bringing a different perspective. And that was really what excited me. And so when I went to Georgia Tech, I really wondered, am I going to be able to do that? Is there going to be an opportunity to start something and also, if they launch something new from something that already exists? Laura, about you've always done accounting and healthcare. Do you have to do that? Has been at Georgia Tech. There have been so much research, so many innovations that have come out of Georgia Tech in a particular vertical that we've been able to leverage in healthcare. And the result is that we're able to jumpstart. We're able to leapfrog into healthcare very quickly because you work with the security folks, or you work with the folks in biochemistry, or you work with the folks in big data, and they've been doing this research and these innovations for years, but they haven't necessarily moved it into healthcare. And it moves almost not seamlessly, but there's certainly a good fit. And when you have folks like I'm working with on a daily basis who are saying, sure, let's find a new application for this. Let's find a new vertical that we can move this into. It's been very exciting. So it has been a winding path with a lot of forks in the road, but in hindsight, this is what I planned to do, but no, I didn't. It ended up this way because an opportunity presented itself, and you see it.
Okay, and if you go to the next slide, both Greg and Sherry have started things. So you've led to areas where you didn't know where you were going. And what I always have for leadership that makes me laugh is if you walk into my son's class, which is a lot like this. Well, unfortunately now it doesn't. He's bigger. It used to look like this. Greg's class looks like this. And you ask these children who wants to be the leader, right? I mean, these kids will tackle their best friend to be the leader, right? And they don't have a clue where they're going, but for sure they want to be first. Ask a high school class that who wants to be first, that probably won't even look at you, right? I mean, nobody will raise their hand. Nobody wants to be first. So I always wonder what changed from the person who wanted to lead no matter where you were going, which is one extreme, to the person who doesn't want to lead anywhere. Obviously there's an element of fear that enters the equation there, but what if, if someone's sitting there saying, I wish I could start something, but I can't start, how do you get started? Because, I mean, that's what real leadership is going to healthcare when, like you said, you and Chad didn't know a thing about healthcare.
Right. Still don't
really. But, I mean,
cancer.
But, you hear people all the time say, well, I think about that, so I can't do it. Your greatest idea may be in an area that you're not schooled in, right? It may be something you know.
The other thing is, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Brooks' latest book, The Road to Character, but he really describes this idea of, there was a study done in the 50s where they asked a middle school class, junior high school class, whatever, how many people in here think they're going to be growing up to be something great, that will be a great person? About 5 to 10% raised their hands. Now, if you go into a high school, it's like 80%. So we have an expectation, children have an expectation now, grown, I think, to some degree by their parents, to say, you're right, you're awesome, you can do anything you want to, and that's a good thing. I think it amplifies leadership in a way that I think is somewhat inappropriate, which say leadership comes in different forms. And I can tell you that when I was out of commission for several months during my illness, Chad stepped up. Now, if Chad was here in our board meetings, Chad might have said 5 words the whole time. You were supposed to back up on that. Where were you? You were out getting a glass of water or something. But when he was interim CEO, for me to watch that process, I learned a lot from him. His leadership style, very different than my leadership style. One of the things that as society, especially Western society, we focus a little too much on the guy or gal who raises their hand every time. It's like, that's good, and we want that. But we also want the thinker. We want the person who sits in the room and listens, understands they may have just as much courage as the person who raises their hand
Right.
and yells, you know, that sound that you come out of first, second grade with. So, and we use it at HBS too. I mean, the big
come out of first
challenges
and
are gonna
second
be-
grade, but HBS students use it.
Exactly. I want some points. I gotta get a 1 in this class. So, in any case, I think that we need to be clear, especially again in Western society, that every kind of leadership is important, and innovation is the United States' greatest,
Right.
asset,
I agree.
right? It's not gonna be much of an asset though if we only celebrate those entrepreneurs who are the raise
Right.
the hand real high.
Right.
It's leadership that we can find in different ways that matter
Yeah.
too.
So, Laura, appreciate that. There's a couple things. One, growing up in a military family, just because you're in front doesn't mean you're leading. Okay? It just means you're in front. Okay? And just because there are people behind you doesn't mean they're following you. It just means there's some people behind you. Okay? So it really it took it to a level that one is you evolve to be a leader, and often it is due to your servitude. And so I come from, my passion has always been how can I serve others, and if I can serve others in a way that enables them to be successful, hopefully my hope is that naturally the leadership will evolve. That's something that we continue to practice at Georgia Tech as well. But Laura, I guess it was, I think how many years ago, and we were doing a class together, the two of us. You were talking about ideation, and I came in with kind of a real world example of using ideation. I don't know if you remember or not. And everyone in the audience said, you talked about creativity, kids being creative, and how up until the year, I think it was 5, that kids
Creativity is age 5.
the peak of creativity is at the age of 5. And you ask people in the audience, why was that? It's because they started school. And they took their crayons away from them. I mean,
Got handed a blue and a black pen.
yeah,
Color a
I
lot
had
of
a
things
blue
with
and a
that.
black pen, and that has stuck with me. And it even now today, you go into my daughter's 11-year-old, what we call her Star Wars, right? There's a lot of technology in there, but we have, literally like, a 3-foot-high stack of pens, and we go back to that. And I think that it's the simplest things that enable that creativity and entrepreneurship, and I've seen it time after time. And there was either a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal article that talked about the wheel. And I know I'm a lot older than you guys. You may not remember it, but the crux of the article was that the squeaky wheel does the dial, right? They typically get what they want, but they don't represent the masses. But management thinks they do.
Yeah.
Capital are constantly going in saying this, and this, and CEO thinks, well, we need to do this because this person clearly is vocal in representing the masses. When in reality, often it's 80% of the folks who aren't raising their hand, who aren't storming the door, who have those ideas, and who can really move the company to the next level, but they're not being
Well, you
recognized.
just said something at the very beginning of which that was the word servitude, and this gets back to, I'm not a shill for David Brooks, I promise you, a royalty from all these bookshelves, but what he talks about is in society, we tend to think, entrepreneurs especially, because we see Silicon Valley and the glamour of the beginning and the end. Start a company, sell it, make a lot of money. Start a company, sell it, make a lot of money. They're bookends to things we do. There are research scientists out there who may work their entire lives to take a molecule
That's right.
from this point to that point, and they know there's no way they're going to cure a certain kind of cancer in their lifetime.
Move the dial.
But to move it,
That's right.
and the person's going to come along and they're going to move it. And need both.
Yeah.
Because, clearly, money and fame and all those sorts of things are part of human reality.
But it creates short-termedness talks a lot to what we just talked about, is the culture of an organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. Which, to your point, if you're only listening to the squeaky wheel, if you as the leader are only taking input from the person who's the most outgoing, the most extroverted, the most in your face, you're missing 99% of what's really going on. But if you do that, you also set the stage to tolerate that behavior in everybody else. I just thought that went well. And then if you go to the next slide, this is our posters, because it's the attributes of people who made 10th grade history book. And I know you probably can't read that from afar, but you can get the webinar on tape and look at it. But what you see is when you go down the bullet points, you see the first one seemed pretty good, right? They're committed, they're dedicated, they're focused, they're passionate. But my favorite ones are at the bottom, because they're completely flawed. They piss a whole lot of people off. They're irreverent. They're disrespectful. I mean, all those things that if you exhibited that behavior in kindergarten, you would not only not get the gold star, you'd be in timeout, your parents would be called, right? So, again, it's how do you take those different types of leadership? Because leadership comes in all forms. It's not always the student that sat up front, that raised their hand, that marched to the right beat. At this point, they may just be in front. They may not have anybody leading them.
Just the over-indexes among Fortune 500.
Really?
It also gets to the point of what challenges have you faced in your life? It's against the stone.
Right.
And people who've gone through some way or some tragedy or something else go from a pure idealism, sure, idealism, but realism, not pessimism, different. Realism in that they understand, their limitations, and they can bring up.
But if that's true, then given the fact that this day and age we're protecting our children from every possible failure, are we preventing that from ever happening?
I think we are.
We'll have a whole birth of realism.
I think we are. No, I think that's exactly right. That's a major issue that we've got in both public and private schooling, K through 12. It's a major problem. And we tend to be, as parents, it's just our nature. We want the best for our children. We try to focus on what makes them happy. They're different people.
Right.
They have different things that they're going to be attracted to. Own those things that they're passionate about. Celebrate those things. Don't compare, that sort of stuff.
Well, and actually, one of my favorite stories of that is a story about you, Sherry, that I tell other people all the time. And you don't remember this, but I remember you telling me one time that someone wanted to put your daughter in remedial math. And your response was, I will only let you do that if you tell me which children are in remedial art. Because she was gifted in art. And she said that's the wrong message, right? You're elevating just one of those things. But, I think people all the time that are our age say, well, we want what's best for our children. And my response is always, what if best isn't the best? Because I look at all these people that are highly successful, their backgrounds. They all grew up in challenging environments. They may have gone to an average school, but they excelled. They went through different challenges, and they excelled. And now they're at a point where they can give their children the best of the best. And I'm like, but successful, you can have that.
Well,
so maybe the best isn't the best.
Well, it's teaching, and this is great, because we've gotten into sort
That's right.
Forest, right?
I have family applied in my set.
The farm system,
Yeah.
right, for new entrepreneurs
right.
and innovation. I very much believe that the principal role of the parent is to teach character. The character is what sets apart someone who will do the right, not just do good things, but actually be good.
Right.
And a person is inherently good, they will most likely make the right decisions. And oftentimes those decisions aren't even in the interest of themselves, but
Most
the
times
interest
they're
of
not.
others.
Right.
Right.
And I agree with that, Greg, and we have a 27-year-old, a 22-year-old, and an 11-year-old husband, 30 years, and our children not be more different.
Yeah.
I mean, they are night and day. And, what we've tried to do is to lead by weren't here tomorrow, would the world miss you?
Yeah.
Much would miss you.
Eulogy
Okay.
virtues.
Right. Make a difference. Every day, wake up and think about how can I serve others? Because by serving others, everything else will come to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, and so it has. My husband retired, went back to school, got a PhD degree, so he could teach at an at-risk.
He was in finance.
He was in and I went, now you're going to do what? And
Right.
what do I have to sell now?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
He subscribed to the Greg Foster salary reduction.
Yes. You're going to make, but not half, 1/20th, But it was, again, the lesson to our children, what we hoped to convey was, he did this early in his career so that he could spend the latter years truly giving back.
Right.
Yes.
And all of our older kids have said it has been a wonderful example to them to see that, Dad, worked like a dog basically all of these years so that he could get to a point in his 50s to where he could say, no more. I'm going to spend the remaining 5 years doing this. So it is about leading by example.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you commented that we got to family because later in the deck I actually have a slide that just family, because one of the things I find with entrepreneurs is we all talk about what we do for work, we talk about what led us to make that decision, but I've yet to meet a successful entrepreneur that didn't have the support of their family, whatever that family might be. I mean, it may be a spouse and children, it may be parents, it may be siblings, etc. But I couldn't do what I do if my husband didn't work COLA, have his. I mean, every decide as a family is about the aggregate portfolio of what we're doing, right? So just what's my next opportunity is, what's his opportunity, and how do we balance those, and how does one add to the next? And quickly, I don't think you can be successful. Being a successful entrepreneur at the expense of being a great parent and a great spouse, I don't think is success.
No, it's not. I'll tell you, I was at one of the classes that Create X is now funding, talking about funding. So it's a very constructive discussion, but I focused on the fact that, when you start a company, it's having another spouse. You're going to spend more time with that company oftentimes than you spend at home with your spouse.
And it's taking all your resources,
yeah,
time and
taking
money.
all and your thinking time.
Yeah.
So your brain works in a way that all that processing, that latent processing in your brain is focused on that. Because, the way I always justify it is, I've got employees, we pay them, they have families. If we don't focus on it, they may lose, they go downhill, they lose their job, their families may be affected. But you have another child. Child needs rearing, taken care of, and fed, and all that stuff. So if you kid or two kids, kids, in your situation,
I have one, you have two, she has three.
So you essentially divide up. And Christine talked about this a lot. She's been just incredibly supportive of me in great times. And we got married, and I think she thought, oh man, this is going to be great. I married an HBS guy. He's going to have a huge investment banking job. I'll never have to work. She
started out at the Four Seasons, and look where you ended up.
Everything downhill. And that takes a special person.
Yeah.
When your spouse is your partner, like your business partner.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you go to the next slide, I think, one of the things that I often hear people say is, that their goal in life or in their career is success. And if you look in the dictionary, the definition of success is the favorable or prosperous termination of an endeavor. And the part that bothers me about that is the word termination, because success is finite. It means you did it, right? You won the game, you got the award. And so everybody defines success differently, whether it's money, whether it's status, whether it's power, titles, awards. I think entrepreneurs are driven by something bigger, and I don't think it's any of those. And a very wise woman, Billy Pendleton Parker at Georgia Tech, made the comment that success is finite, but significance is infinite, and that your goal should never be success, it should be significance, which is what is asked your children, right? If you weren't around Greg talked is, when you think about what you're passionate about, none of you focused on the what. I mean, there's commonalities. It might have to do with healthcare, it may have to do with technology, et cetera, but it was more the so what. It was more the what it did for other people as opposed to, wow, I got this really cool kid, right? So, how do you think about, as people there think about what they're passionate about, how do I pursue that? How do you find the so what that you're passionate about?
Yeah,
the
you
what.
better find it, because if you don't find it, it's going to be hard to recruit people to the. For us, it's interesting because we were contributing to part of the problem, but we were also contributing to part of the solution. Say, if I
Great. Create a problem and solve it.
Absolutely.
Lifetime employment.
There you go. Set spike. So, part of what I tried to talk about, and I did this with our clients too, we were overt with our clients about where we were heading, which is, at hospital as a provider, your economics are dorked up. Dorked up, you term.
Highly technical.
Highly technical. Your world is changing, as we speak. If you don't have the right kinds of patients in here, you're closed up. So whether it be the nuns and the fathers there at the Catholic or the Episcopal, it's nonprofits, or it's a for-profit center like Piedmont or Tender ACA or whomever, you think of your mix of folks. And oh, by the way, here comes the Affordable Care Act, which basically puts a ton of people on the rolls, and at the same time also created accountability as a measurement. So then we pivoted, and so that's the story. The ending virtuous story is that we're going to help you prevent procedures that are not going to get reimbursed at the rates at which they have historically been reimbursed. So now we're saving the world. We did a disaster, and now we're saving the world. It's like, oh,
That's perfect. It is. A little bit.
episode 1, 2, 3.
That's right. Fine. Can you actually go to the last slide? Because I think it kind of goes with what we're about, which is sort of, and we've got just 5 or 10 minutes left. I wanted to kind of close on what is this entrepreneur path? So in terms of, identifying a problem, maybe it was a need, maybe it's a need you helped create. But then also, where does entrepreneurship start? So when Greg and I were at Georgia Tech, I don't think anybody talked about entrepreneurship, right? And you went to Tech, you took classes, you lined up to interview with all the big companies. And I think there's a lot going on at Tech now that allow entrepreneurship to happen earlier in your career. I think of us, entrepreneurship was something you might stumble into, but it wasn't where you started, right? It came somewhere later in your career. You hear people say, well, I'm going to start at that big company and then I'll eventually get to entrepreneurship. They're the opposite. You started with entrepreneurship and now back at a large educational institution, which, everyone said, how in the world is that going to work? So what's kind of interesting is to think about entrepreneurship in a lot of different places in your career. It doesn't have to be where you start. It doesn't have to be where you end. It could be on the path to something else, or it could be the end goal. What's going on at Tech that helps students start earlier. And the fact that you start in entrepreneurship may not mean that's where you end up. I mean,
well, and Greg, there's so many things that we're doing at Tech to foster that type of environment and to enable.
And last name, Foster.
Oh,
yeah, good pun.
I knew that. Intended pun. But I can meet with students and I'll hear them talk about what they're doing, and I'm like, I'll say to them, you're on the path to entrepreneurship, and they're like, what? I mean, they haven't really thought about it. So it's interesting to me that we are creating these entrepreneurs at Tech,
And they don't
even realize it.
Well, it's funny to me that you look at them and that's what you think. I look at Tech students today and I think, I wouldn't have even thought about the 10 things you've already done.
Yeah.
Well, that goes without saying. I'm like, yikes, these people are really, really scary. Really, really smart. But the focus is, so much of the focus is that, they're engineers and they're going to solve problems. Okay, so what next? And the way that we're helping those students, and not just students, but the faculty, is great idea. You've taken it to here. You know, how can we help you take it to the next level? How can we take this from idea to commercialization and it be translational? That is where the real power is in tech, is that they are offering the opportunity for students / entrepreneurs / problem solvers to work with industry, to work with other partners, so that, you know, the ideas or the products that are coming out of that truly meet a need. It is translational and having impact. You know, you were talking about significance. We talk a lot about impact. How can we impact the lives of children? Every morning, the first thing, I mean, literally my first thought after my cup of tea or coffee, okay, how can we have impact today? What can we do to move the dial just a little bit? And coming through for these students, and they're starting to see impact, and they start to get excited about the next thing.
Yeah.
I think that I was thinking about this as I was weaving through traffic. Because I thought,
That's right.
Greg,
ready to tour. I've had to get to our office.
but if you look at the last three presidents, the Line, President Creesign, actually laid the groundwork, built the college of computation, essentially focused on applied science. Probably, you know, focused quite enough on pure science, but nevertheless, focused a lot on applied science and applied engineering. And when President Clough got here, even in the environment, I think that was strong. He built the foundation that's required to be relevant in a global economy. And now President Peterson has gone to the map. And 5 pillars in our strategic plan, entrepreneurship is now one of those. And you see Dr. May, Dr. McLaughlin, these guys are in the process of using, you know, of engineering and the College of Engineering, the College of Computing, to build curricula that are not just kind of class, but have a goal of actually building real understanding of what entrepreneurship is and business in general.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we were in school, we wanted to look at what a curriculum was. It was mapped out for you.
Yeah.
Right? You just followed the path. It's like Candyland to get a degree, right? You take this course and this course and this course. Now,
The person who graduated with highest honors in aerospace engineering, by the way.
it was Candyland. But I mean, today when you look at what people are doing, they're putting their own curriculum. And I think it's happening in undergraduate, it's happening at business school. You know, no longer is it to get degree X, you take these 10 things, and everybody has the same background. It's more, what world problems do you want to help solve, and what can we put together to create the body of knowledge that positions you to do that. And I think it's amazing. It's going on, you know, academic institutions, but it also has to translate into business. I find in our companies, I can't remember the last time we hired somebody just to fill a box, right? It used to be, okay, here's the spot, we're going to interview and we're going to fill it. Now it's, we need this type of thinker and this problem solver, and then we create the role. So it kind of goes together a little bit.
Well, we're talking about to kind of shift the family for a second, because, you know, my daughter, my oldest, she had interviewed with someone, and they said, well, what do you want to do?
Her business was at that movie.
She said, she's my daughter, okay? She said, you how I think. I mean, you know, her whole thing was, I'm good at a lot of different things, you know. You know, let's work together and figure out the best fit. She actually interviewed recently with someone who hired her, and in Savannah, and it was, and I said, that's the right boss for you.
Yeah.
That's the right boss. The boss who is, wow, I love the fact that you're good at a lot of different things. Let's work together and figure out the best fit in this organization.
Right.
You're going to fail at some things, but you're going to succeed at some things. That goes back to finding the right boss.
Yeah, Arthur was hire athletes. I would care if they were a great, you know, surgeon on the field. Couldn't less.
Yeah.
If I could hire an athlete who, you know, mind and understanding some of the, you know, about who they were and willingness to take chances, that was our culture, and we weren't going to
Carolyn, do you want to open it up for questions?
Absolutely. That sounds great. And thank you all so much. This has been a fantastic discussion and so many important lessons in entrepreneurship and beyond. They're so applicable broadly too. So thank you very much. And like Laura said, you all, if you would not mind, just submit your questions via the chat window. That would be fantastic. We'll relay those to our speakers and get those answered. Any questions, folks?
We've read everybody speechless.
Well, I have my first one coming in right now. So since we're talking about healthcare, what new updates or changes do you all expect with the new president regarding Obamacare?
My point of view, and I'm sure you have a very good point of view too, Sherry. Regardless of your politics, the reality is that accountability will drive the next era. Now, people say, oh, well, we're right back to the beginning of managed care and capitation and things of that nature. I suggest that it's not quite, it's a more profound change where the remission and keeping folks sick and diabetes patients who might be worth $5 million to provide over their lifetime, those people are not what they want any longer. They pay people well, that they need the type of person who's going to stick to their meds, lose weight, so that they don't develop type 2 diabetes. That mentioned, there's a lot of goodness in that idea. Where government fails oftentimes, I think, is they try to go too fast. Not me. I'd say too fast. TARP 2 provided all this money for meaningful use, not to get too technical, but and all meaningful use, all this meaningful use dollars made it so that now whenever we go to the doctor, we have a new portal that we have to sign to and get our records, and we don't even understand half the codes and things like that are in there. It's entitlement. A new Congress and a new president are not going to take away health care from 15 million people.
I would say that the very reason that I was interested and stepped away from healthcare today again for me, and that is, when are we going to align the incentives? We are still, regardless of whether you want to call it Obamacare or Affordable Care Act, we still have not aligned the incentives. So we are still in a pure fee-for-service unless you run a closed system like the Kaiser, right? And until we align those incentives so that, you're not paid fee-for-service, nothing's going to change. We can talk about accountability all we want, but the reality is, if the doctor isn't being paid unless they perform, see me in the office, So we still don't get it. The system's still broken. We can sit here all day and talk about how wonderful things are if we want, and we align the incentives, it isn't going to change.
Well, I think, too, unfortunately, a big first outcome of the ACA was that the payers decided that they couldn't figure out how to underwrite the risk of tens of millions of people. So premiums went up. So the fact is, if you're a small business owner, you have a decision. Either make deductibles higher for your employees, or you pay the premiums yourself, or take away health care altogether. And because the payers they were the biggest beneficiary of the ACA, at least right now. So now that may change, and hopefully that will change, but that's an unintended consequence of, and now an aberration of sorts in the marketplace. That pendulum's going to have to swing back to some normalcy. But ADOs, there are only, 600-700 ADOs?
Oh, my goodness.
And I'd say that
the percent,
savings.
I was going to say, and also the percent of the overall market is relatively small. We can't just align incentives for the providers. We have to align incentives for the consumers. And healthcare is the only thing where we're not held accountable. I'm held accountable in my job. I'm held accountable with my car. I'm held accountable in my personal life. My bank holds me accountable. My credit competitors hold me accountable, but woo-woo, accountability.
The challenge, I think, is to get good doctors who's looking at, the folks who come before them with RGs,
Yeah.
pay their force payments, right?
Maybe you are older than I think. You remember CRT.
But, that's still the driving force, and that drives a lot of people to go into medicine. That incentive is starting to crumble.
Absolutely.
And primary care, those folks are just employees now as they get gobbled up. Specialty care is coming soon. That's all happening too. Either they're consolidating or they're selling off to under the umbrella of a large system. So it's a very weird thing. And there's a balance there where my hope is that care will not degrade. It will, I think, in the short term start to decrease to some degree, but it'll come back.
I agree. And we are, what we hear from our industry partners at Georgia Tech is that their biggest challenge is how do I remain sustainable?
Yeah.
In a fee for and how do I remain sustainable as I move from fee for service to an accountable care organization? And that's a challenge. And a lot of the answers in the data, I won't get into that, but we're doing some great things at Georgia Tech along those lines.
Hey, one more question, folks. We've actually got a double on the line, a physician owning her own practice. Very excited about the prospects of networking with other folks in the healthcare area of entrepreneurship. Do you all have any suggestions on what might be some good outlets for her?
Did you get to know Sherry?
Yes.
Hey, draw me an email. I'm more happy to pass along some of the networks that I belong to, but also more
Perfect.
to this person about what they're trying to accomplish and see if I can potentially make a match. I'd be more than happy to do that. And Laura, are you going to put our email address?
Yeah,
You can certainly put my email address up there for anybody to contact.
Okay. And you want me to just send you the email addresses?
That's perfect. Yes, and I'll make the introduction.
Okay. Caroline, I'm in your database.
The directory. Exactly. I saw you on the website earlier.
I'd be more happy to talk with her.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Well, about 10 after, almost 10 after now, and I do not have any pending questions lined up, but I appreciate it so very much, Laura, Sherry, Greg. Thanks so much for spending this hour, and you all that are on the line, thank you all very much for participating. I hope we have more conversations like this coming up soon, and really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.